Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's class, Management Information System. And last week we were able to look at the advantages of Management Information System, and then we also looked at the characteristics of Management Information System. So we're going to be building this class from there, from where we stopped. So today we're going to be looking at Management Information System, okay, that comprises of planning, controlling, and we also look at the of management information system. So quickly this morning we'll be going into, okay, we'll be to make my slides fuller so that you can see it appropriately. So yes, so we'll be looking at planning. And what is planning in management? Planning basically is a management process, okay, that is concerned with defining goals for a company's future direction and then determining the missions and resources to achieve those targets. I take it again. I said planning in management refers to defining goals for a company's future direction and determining the missions and resources to achieve those targets. So where does the company want to be in the nearest future? What are the resources available in achieving these futuristic goals? How are we going to achieve those objectives? So that's basically what planning is all about. So if I'm to sketch what looks like planning on the board, you will see a cycle, okay, a planning cycle. I can sketch into three places. The first is planning answers the question where, when, how, what, who, why. So when you're planning for an organization, when you're undertaking that particular process of planning within an organization, these are questions that you need to be asking and then answering them. Those are the things that make up your planning. So where do we want to be the next 10 years as far as the organization is concerned? Okay, what is our objectives? What are we going to achieve in the next 10 years? When do we start the process? How talks about the resources. The how and the what talks about the resources. And who talks about those who are responsible, okay, for this planning. So planning basically is the responsibility of the top level management, okay, and is concerned with strategic planning. So top level management are actually the ones responsible for this planning, okay. Now your planning must have some objectives. It has to do with goal oriented. Your planning process must be goal oriented. It must be pervasive. It must be a continuous activity. Intellectual process is also, part of planning process. It must be futuristic. It must give room for decision making, and of course, like we said, is a managerial function. So all these are what is done during the planning process. Okay. Now, when we talk about planning management information system, remember that what we're doing is management information system. The use of computers, okay, and softwares to actually make this plan possible is what planning management information system is. And there are 4 types of planning as far as MIS is concerned. Okay, these 4 types of planning must be used by the top level management or the managers. Number 1 is strategic. So we have what we call strategic planning. Strategic planning has to do with how we can reposition the company, okay, from where they are, from the position where they are to another. How can we? That's strategic planning. Number 2 is tactical planning. We talk about tactics for those who play football. How can you maneuver? How can you use your skills, okay, and techniques to outshine? So strategic is where you intend to see what can define your organization better than another person. Then the tactical has to do with the skills and the techniques you're going to employ to make that strategic plan work. Then the operational has to do with the day-to-day operations of the company. That has to do with both, the policies, the rules and regulations, the procedures in doing the activities. Then, of course, the last one is the contingency plan. That has to do with in case there's any problem, do you have an alternative to actually solve those problems? So those are the 4 types of planning. Take it again: strategic planning, tactical planning, operational planning, and contingency planning. So all this are what organizations use to reposition themselves to another level. And like we said, we talk about planning process. It is the responsibility of the top level management. Okay. Somebody may ask, why is planning very, very important as far as organizations are concerned? Okay. It helps, just like we said, it helps in decision making, it helps to know how to allocate resources in a way that will enable the organization to reach its objectives. And then it helps to maximize resources and to avoid wastage and the rest of them. Then, of course, the future, projecting the future. Okay, those are some of the importance of planning. So the use of computer system to actually do this is what our concern is as far as the planning is concerned. Even as I've told you, this planning process has its pros and its cons. Okay, advantages and disadvantages. But basically, we just want to dwell on, we've already talked about the advantages, what advantages planning has. Okay, but some persons have argued that there are some drawbacks or disadvantages as far as planning is concerned. He said one of the theories I read says planning leads to complacency. Okay, it makes planning makes activities prevent flexibility. Okay, these are some of the things that. Sorry about that. So plans also inhibit creativity because once you put the plan in place, the only thing that organizations want to do is what has been written down. So sometimes, it doesn't give room for flexibility and the rest of them. Okay, so that's basically planning as far as MIS is concerned. So the second one that I want to talk about has to do with controlling. Okay, I hope you understand the plan I just explained. All right, so number 2 is controlling. When we talk of controlling, what comes to mind? Simply, we define controlling as the function of management which helps to seek planned results from the subordinates, managers, and at all levels of an organization. Hello? I hope everybody can hear me. All right, so controlling has to do with it's a management function that helps to seek planned results from the subordinates, managers, and at all levels of an organization. The controlling function helps in measuring the progress towards the organizational goals and brings any deviation and indicates corrective action. So control actually helps us to know if we're actually doing what is expected of us, what we actually agreed upon to do. Are we at the right track? Are we actually fulfilling the objectives as laid down in the plan? Okay, so those are the things that controlling does, and there are 5 steps. When we talk about controlling, there are basically 5 steps that we need to understand as far as controlling is concerned. Number one, it involves ensuring that performance does not deviate from standard. So control helps us to ensure that performance does not deviate from standards. Okay, so what controlling does is that it helps us to set standard. Number two, it helps us to measure performance. Number three, it helps us to compare performance to standards. Number four, it helps to determine the reasons for deviations. And number five, it helps us to take corrective actions as needed. Let me repeat it again. I said number one, it sets standards. Number two, it measures performance. Number three, it compares performance to standard. That's benchmark. Number four, it determines the reason for deviation. And then number five, it takes corrective actions as needed. Those are the 5 steps in controlling. Now, in an organization, there are different areas, okay, that controlling is needed. In marketing and in sales, in production and operations, inflow of raw materials, policies and procedures, control of employees, both the middle level and the bottom level. These are different aspects of an organization that controlling, okay, is needed. Different levels of controlling is needed. Okay, there are even more that we have here. We have in accounting, so you also need to also control accounting, staff welfare and security, work performance, control of equipment and technology, control of flow of information, control of customer relationship. So these are the various aspects of an organization where you need control. Like I said, the basic objective for control in an organization is to ensure that what is being planned is actually what is being carried out. Okay, what is being planned is actually what is being carried out. That's the essence of control, and you need this control in every aspect of an organizational performance. Right? Like we said, the 5 steps include to set standard, control, set standard, control measures performance, control also compares performance with the standard that is set. It determines the reasons for deviation, and of course, it takes corrective action as needed. So those are so when you use MIS like computer systems to control this aspect of the organization, from accounting to work performance to equipment to inflow of resources to staff welfare to sales to production, that is actually control as far as management is concerned. Now, what are the limitations now? Okay, to all this that I've just talked about, limitations. Number one that you have there is aggression. Aggression is really one of the limitations that we have as far as this is concerned, because the staffs may not be comfortable with all the things that you plan, especially when you have to now micromanage them to ensure, just like we talked about in the control, you're trying to ensure that they follow standard, try to measure performance, and the rest of them. So sometimes the people may hit back at the system and may even sabotage it by using equipment incorrectly, or by putting incomplete information into the system, or by actual destructions of hardware or software. So they want to sabotage the entire thing. Some say we won't go and carry virus and put the system so that everything will crash. And then when it crashes, you won't be able to measure performance or compare performance with standard and the rest of them. Aggression. When it becomes too much and people can no longer do it anymore, they begin to fight back the system. Sometimes they personally destroy the hardware or the software just to be sure that that doesn't work. Or sometimes when they are using the system and everything, they may put the incomplete information just to make sure that the system fails. And when you ask them, they said, it's what I give this system. I don't understand what's happening. No. I will just came this one, I discovered this things like that. They just want to discredit it. So they can now do what they want to do. They want to do it their own way, not follow the laid down way. So that's number one limitation of management information system. It brings about aggression among the people. And number two is projection. Projection has to do with a psychological mechanism of blaming difficulties on someone or something else. When employees blame the management information system for problems caused by human error and other factors unrelated to the system, projection has taken place. Even when they make mistake, instead of them taking responsibility, they're the ones that made mistake, they'll blame it on the system. You understand? So once you've done that, that's referred to as projection. Refusing to take responsibility because you've seen a way to maneuver yourself, to pull yourself out of that thing. So they say it's a computer error. The system shut down when I was trying to input the data. You understand? Those are the things that the system just crashed when I was trying to do this. So instead of people taking responsibility for the errors or mistakes that they made, they push it back to the system. There's a system that caused this problem. That becomes the second limitation of management information system. The number three is avoidance. Avoidance. What happens is that because they're already frustrated, you find that personnel or staff begin to avoid the use of system. They rather prefer to go back to the click way of doing the job. They rather go back the analog way rather than just embracing the digital way. So you see people begin to avoid, okay, they withdraw from or avoid the situation. Okay, so those are some of the things. They ignore the use. Okay, even when the system gives you an output or a result, we just discredit it. I beg, this one is not true, it's not correct, and the rest of them, people just stay away from it because they may not like what the system will give them at the end of the day. So that becomes another limitation. So those are the three major limitations of management information system. Let me explain it again. I said aggression is number one, where people begin to find things or find ways to just discredit the system by making sure that the systems are completely destroyed, either by the use of virus or they just destroy the hardware or the software just to discredit the system. Because they're trying to fight back. Especially the corrupt ones. If you imagine, for example, now you know how to make 1 or 2 million, you know how to cut corners of the rest of the day. By the time management information system is now installed within an organization, see all those loopholes that were there before will be exposed. No longer will people find ways to cut corners. They become aggressive. They want to fight it. They want to break down the system. They want to just discredit it so that they can go back to the ways that they do their things. Okay? We talked about projection, blaming the system, the management information system for all errors, even the ones that are caused by human, even the human errors to push it back to the system. That's projection. And avoidance would just neglect the result of the MIS. They discredit it for nothing because they've been there for a very long time. This system is not correct. The rest of them, and then they try to avoid it. Once they're able to make their point, that's an opportunity for them to just avoid it. All right. So those are the things that make up a management information system. And then how we can actually use it in an organization to plan, to control, okay, organization's activities. So quickly, let's look at how to develop management information system. Let's look at how we can develop management information system and what are the steps to follow in system implementation. Okay, so that's the next thing we're going to be looking at. So what are the methods of implementation? We're going to be looking at them one after the other. The one is plan the implementation. Methods or steps in system implementation. Plan for implementation. Now we look at the slide, there are three main phases in implementation to take place. Okay, and this must be done in series. Number one is initial installation. Number two is test of the system as whole. And number three is evaluation, which has to do with maintenance and control of the system. I'm going to explain it one after the other for clarity purpose. So step number one is planned implementation. The first step is to plan for implementation, and you must follow the following. Like number one, we talked about identify the implementation task. What do we want to implement? Now, before starting implantation system, analysts must be able to identify the implementation task. Okay. Now, the plan should list all sub-tasks for each of these major tasks so that individuals in the organization may be assigned specific responsibilities. So what do you want to implement within the organization? Identify the task first. Now, when you identify the tasks, bring out subtasks, okay, that will make up the main task itself, and then distribute it among the individuals who are expected to carry out that task. Once you've been able to do that, initiate an installation. Okay, initiate an installation. Now, installation tells actually, just like for example, now in project management, there's what called MS Project. For example, MS Project 2 is actually used for planning project and the rest of them. When you look at the MS Project, we have what looks like an Excel sheet. We call it the Gantt chart. The function of the Gantt chart is to actually put up the task, okay, that needs to be carried out on a daily basis. So let's say, for example, now we want to, let's say, for example, we want to do a particular production to produce 100 cartons of Indomie, for example. That becomes a task. Now, this is the major task. Understand that though that task you just listed, you have sub-tasks. And those sub-tasks, like for example, getting the raw materials, getting the equipment ready, the operational procedures, the packaging, and then the distribution and the rest of them, those becomes a sub-task of that major task, which is production of 100 cartons of Indomie. Once you're able to list this task and the subtask and then assign responsibilities on the Gantt chart, this MS project I'm talking about, on the Gantt chart, you put it like that. There are spaces, there are columns to fill in this information. The task, the duration, start date and finish date, the person responsible for it. That's the use of MIS in organization. Okay, so once you have the task and the subtask and the personnel responsible for that task, all you need to do is not to install it to everyone's system. So that once it's time to undertake this particular task, it notifies everyone who is responsible for that. Okay, so that's how to plan for implementation. Okay, identify the task that needs to be carried out. Okay, break the task into subtasks for it to be easily managed, and then assign responsibilities of those subtasks to different personnel. Now, once you're done, install. Okay, once you're able to install it, if you're using MS Project, for example, type it in and install it to your the system. So that those who are expected to carry that responsibility will always be notified once it's done. Now, once you install, test the system to be sure that it's working. So before you actually go ahead to fully implement it, be sure that what you have installed is working. So you test the system as a whole, and then evaluation has to do with you must put up strategies of how to maintain and control the system to avoid failures and the rest of them. So that becomes number one. Okay, just like what I've been explaining since identify the implementation task, establish relationship among the task, which is a subtask, establish a schedule. Schedule has to do with the time. Then prepare the cost schedule, that is the budget to achieve that task and the time. Then establish a reporting system. These are the things that the MIS helps you to do. The project management tool I talked about helps you to do. All right. So number two is to acquire floor space and plant space layouts. Sometimes these installations may be too big. Okay. that you need a space, okay, to actually put up this installation. It can be in form of a computer room, okay. It can be in form of a, an installation facility, the rest of them. So the major thing is acquire a space where this hardware, this computer hardware can operate from. Then from there, you can now connect it through network CCNA, okay, through networking, connect it to other various computers, but there must be a place, a primary place where these informations are being disseminated to other subunits. So you must acquire a space where, like I said, you can call it a computer room and production layout, where these things can actually take place from. Okay, so when you are doing that, now this installation of new system, okay, that you're doing, remember, if you're introducing MIS in an organization, it's not something you just introduce at one go, because sometimes it may overwhelm the workers within that organization. So it's something you have to do strategically, step by step. So while introducing it gradually, you're fading out the old way. And that's how you keep doing it until you completely fade out the old way and people become, used to the new system, which is the MIS itself. So another advantage of doing that step by step or gradually is that it helps them to get acquainted, to get aligned with the functionality of the MIS that is being implemented. Okay. So number two step in system implementation is that you must acquire a space, okay, where this system can be installed. Then organized implementation. Organization has to do with how information. Look at, let's take bank for example. Bank or telecommunication industries are one place that MIS is actually used effectively. So you have a computer room, just like I told you, which is number B. Okay, acquire floor space or space layer. So there's a computer room where all the informations are being managed from and being sent out. Now, when you enter the office, the bank, for example, you will see the cashiers all seated. There's a layout, okay, of how they sit. You have the customer care services. They also have their own layout. You have the operations manager's office, like that, like that. You go upstairs, you see the marketing office, for example. They all have their own layouts. And then just like that, like that. Now, how do you think informations are being disseminated to all these various aspects of the business? It is the use of MIS, computer system. So once you have a room, a computer room, where data are being stored or where data are being processed and the rest of them, it makes it easier now for you to disseminate information. It's just to connect it through a networking device. Okay, so it's just to plug and play. So from the computer room, they have this network cable, okay, that is being sent to all the various units of an organization. So you need to come, once you just come with your system, you put it on, pick up the network cable, plug into your system instantly. You're connected from the main source. Okay, so that's it. You have to organize the implementation, okay, of how this can be achieved, how the information can be disseminated. Okay, so there must be somebody who is in charge of monitoring all those things to make sure that it's working effectively. Okay, then the next one is develop procedures for implementation. Okay, develop procedures for implementation is the next one. And then the last one is train the operating, number E is train the operating personnel. You train them on how to use it. Okay, and this is practical. So if it means bringing somebody in or actually train them on how to use the program or how to use the software to achieve the goals of the MIS. Okay, you have to do that. Just like I said, your personnel, your staff must be fully acquainted, okay, on how to actually operate these computer systems and the rest of them. So training is essential because they are the ones that will be using it day to day, okay, in achieving the objectives of the organization. Okay, so that's number E. And then of course, yeah, so you train the personnel and the rest of them. You develop forms for data collection and information dissemination. There must be a system within place that you can use to collect data and information dissemination. It's also part of MIS. Okay, it's part of system implementation. There must be a place. So even if information of the last 2 months, information of the last 5 years can actually be gotten, can actually be retrieved. Why? Because there's a form, okay, that has been set up within the system to collect, store this data, and of course, disseminate these information anytime the information is needed. Okay, of course, develop the files like that. Like these are associated with you know, system development and implementation. So let's go to the next one, which is yeah, all these ones are just MIS integrity. MIS integrity. Now, when you're installing all those things, like I told you guys, when you're putting all those things in place and they're working, the integrity of a person, a system, a process is determined by how well that particular person, system, or thing is working. Okay, so it is good to always measure the integrity of MIS over time, depending on the person who is managing it. Okay, the system installer or the manager, for example. So MIS integrity has to do with how well does the system do what it's supposed to do? How valid are the system outputs? Is it the kind of one that would lead, like we told you, the limitations of MIS? It leads to aggression, it leads to projection, it leads to avoidance. By the time your system starts, by the time your MIS, your system starts giving computer error, system error, and the rest of them, in fact, that system has lost its integrity and people no longer trust that particular system. So you must measure the integrity of your MIS, manual information system, okay, by understanding the following: how well does the system do what it is supposed to do? How valid are the system's outputs? How success is the system against human error, manipulation, sabotage, or theft? Okay, those are the things that we use in measuring the integrity of MIS. The system must be able to do things that humans cannot do. The system must be able to avoid errors that are naturally errors of humans. The system must avoid manipulation and sabotage and the rest of them, because these are the things associated with humans, with people. The most difficult thing to deal with on planet Earth is managing people. So the essence of management information system is to help coordinate activity within the organization. So if your MIS is now found to do all those things that are associated with humans, the MIS will lose its integrity. Okay, so it is good to actually measure the integrity of MIS over and over and over again. Okay, I have a case study which I would like us to actually look at together. Okay, case study. Let me see if I can find it. Please give me 1 minute to look for this case study. I was looking at it yesterday and I said, okay, let me just share with everybody this morning. Um, okay, now you run a system, for example, you run an organization. I think I just found it. You run an organization. Basically, what you guys do in the organization is use of paperwork. And then all of a sudden, there's a need now to move from paperwork to digitalization of the organization. And now, initially, when you brought up this idea, you had a very serious resistance from your staff for different reasons. Number one, they are very competent, they are more competent in the use of paperwork, they are more comfortable with the use of paperwork. Some of them are not computer literate, and the rest of them. So they have the different reasons why they don't want to accept the digitalization of the organization. Now, among these staff who are actually resisting the introduction of this MIS in the organization are your best staff, okay? Staff that have actually made the company what they are, what the company is, okay? Through sales and marketing and the rest of them. Now you're trying to balance between losing these staffs, okay, because they're not just comfortable, and also implementing this MIS within the organization, because you want, if the paperwork is giving you guys 60, 70%, you need to move a notch higher, 100% with use of MIS. How do you balance between these two? How do you balance between, making your staff understand the essence, okay, of bringing in MIS into the organization, okay, so they don't, you know, get aggressive and the rest of them, and also bring it in. So I want us to look at it together. Probably I'll give it as an assignment. If you're in that position, you're trying to move from the analog to digital. I have a lot of resistance, not just from your staff, your stakeholders, the major financiers of that particular uh, business and the rest of them. How do you manage these two um, these two situations that you're faced with? Okay, implementing MIS fully into the organization. Of course, we said there has to be a gradual process, and trying to make the people, those who are resisting, to buy into the idea of this. When Buhari, for example, came into the system, one of the major things he did was he had to introduce what they call it now, one account system. I've forgotten what they called it that time. Because for I don't know, from the report we read in the newspaper, showed that Nigeria operated over 20, 30 accounts. But they actually had